Again, very interesting discussion, but we have to move on to the next paper now. Urmishri, Professor Urmishri. Professor Urmishri will be talking about a family woman writes her devotional self, figuring Brindavati Dasi in Bhakti rhetoric.
To all the sessions. I'm so glad that we're finally at the end of today's session. And because I just have, I think, 15 minutes on my hands, I'll try to be as brief and as pointed as possible. The purpose of today's presentation is to talk about bhakti, or rather a particular mode of bhakti, as practiced by a family woman in the 17th century, in 17th century Odisha, as she tries to reconcile the modes of bhakti upheld by competing theological traditions, that of the Brajapanthis and the Panchasakha. And she does this in a context of bhakti practices conditioned by family tradition, aspected by ideas of social correctness and desirable behavior with regard to women. By family tradition, with regard to Brindavati Dasi, who is the author of Punnatamo Chandrodaya, I mean two things. One is the traditional vocation of Karana Kura, which constitutes families of state officials, scribes, record keepers, and this has been suggested by scholars with the help of epigraphical evidence from as far back as 7th, 8th century. And this is one such family to which our Bhakta and poet Brindavati Dasi belongs. We also need to bear in mind the historical association of Karanas with record keeping and Panjika writing in the Jagannath temple since the period of Chodaganga Deva. So what matters for us with regard to Karanakura is not Karana as a caste marker, but as a marker of social and political rank. This has been also discussed widely. But yes, the family tradition of Brindavati Dasi is also its membership of a certain socio-religious category, which is the Jati Vaishnava, constituted mainly by householder Vaishnavas. This is important to understand Brindavati Dasi's motivation to write Punnatama Chandrodaya and the significance of her writing activity. And the second thing that I mean by family tradition is her family's discipleship of a certain Guru lineage in the Vaishnava tradition. Now, most of what I say is, of course, based on my reading of Punnatama Chandrodaya only and partial readings of other texts, which I also will be mentioning in this presentation. But my observations come as I try to separate Brindavati Dasi's authorial enterprise from matters of style and literary conventions adopted by her in Punnatama Chandrodaya. For this presentation, I'll focus on the former, which is the authorial enterprise only. But before I go into Brindavati's authorial enterprise, I would like to mention briefly the circumstances of the discovery of this composition in the first half of the 20th century. It was in the 1920s after Prachi Samiti was formed by Arta Vallabh Mahanti, who was then a teacher in Ramshaw College, to retrieve Utkarya text, when he was unpublished texts from the stack of palm leaf manuscripts in the Bhagavata Gadi at his house. So it is K.C. Mahapatra's edition of Prachi Samiti that I am referring to in this paper. I wished to make this point for two reasons. One, to say that Brindavati Dasi is perhaps not the only female bhakta and poet of the 17th century. She is definitely not. The oeuvre of her predecessor, Madhavi Dasi, is somewhat known. There are others such as Hari Dasi and Harapriya Dasi, whose compositions we are yet to engage with. Joseph Cornell, who has conducted some social anthropological research, Jati Vaishnavas of Bengal, reports the existence of literate Jati Vaishnava women who served as tutors in well-to-do families. He also reports manuscripts copied by women, which exist in the holdings of the Asiatic Society of Bengal. In Orissa, it has indeed been difficult, which Dodali is concerned with in another context, to recover unmediated male voices from medieval Indian texts, even when the images and voices of the feminine appear throughout the corpus. The other reason is to sort of foreground how this project, as well as the center hosting this conference, set out an intention for engaging with the problem of an obscure archive. Now, a brief explanation of Brindavati's authorial enterprise and its significance in Purnatama Chandrodaya. While bhajan, kirtan, shravana, pathana, puja, dhyana, smarana, darshan and pilgrimage have always been the most popular embodiments of the emotions of bhakti and the most favored ritual practices of the bhakti public, in Purnatama Chandrodaya, writing is held up as a significant ritual practice in bhakti. Writing, unlike the other practices, is a solitary activity performed in a private space, but the Odia female poet Brindavati Dasi very carefully formulates her act of writing as a significant performance, stageable in front of a community, which evidently already was engaging with and in the traditional public performances of bhakti. She announces a writing performance. Kohai Dasi Brindavati Chinta Karino Radhapati. But her anxiety creeps in almost immediately when she says, Kulanari, Kulanarinko Lakshana, Kulanarinko Bebhara, Parapurusa Rupaguna Kohiva Nuhai Sundara. And then she, by way of justifying her devotion for Krishna, she says, Patinko Sakha Prabhu Moro, Segheni Patinko Samane, Dhyano Koroi Tanku Mane. I'll come back to that again. So Brindavati Dasi is surely an interesting case study for female devotionalism in an Odia Vaishnava family. Of course, her case could be appreciated better if triangulated with ethnographic and anthropological research on Vaishnava households of the early modern and modern periods in Odisha, although there do exist similar researches in the Bengali Vaishnava tradition in the Bengal region. Now, Muto Swabhave Narijana Dharjya Virodha Matihino. So I'll be dwelling on this for a little while. And Narijana, I look at Narijana as a metaphor, and I think Narijana is an interesting metaphor, and Brindavati Dasi uses it with great power. It has multifarious suggestions. It suggests, of course, a woman's weakness of being, lack of intelligence, discerning powers. It also suggests the normative social structures which restrict the modes of expression for a woman, even in the Vaishnava tradition, which makes such a great deal about the Gopi Bhava. So the Narijana metaphor also makes one conscious of the dominant tropes of weeping and lamenting, longing and despair with regard to the identity of a true bhakta, one who is desperate for the Krishna experience. It also accounts for the strange ascriptive identity that a woman bhakta acquires within the Vaishnava community, as exemplified by the situation of Brindavati Dasi's literary predecessor, Madhavi Dasi, whose compositions are available in Sanskrit, Brajboli, Bengali, and Odia. The Chaitanya Charitamrita of Kaviraj Divakar Das, for example, makes note of this ascriptive identity, that of a half bhakta, on account of her biological identity as a woman. I'll cite those lines. Prabhu lekha kare jare Radhika Ramana, Jagatare Madhya Patra Sadhe Tini Jana, Swarupa Gosai au Raya Ramananda, Sikhi Mahanti Tini, Taro Bhagini Ardheka. So, Madhavi Dasi, on account of her prominence as a bhakta, finds a place alongside Sri Rupa Goswami, Raya Ramananda, Sikhi Mahanti, her brother, but only as a half bhakta. And all of them together constitute the group of this great Sadhe Tini Jana bhaktas. So, Narijana may also be seen as a positive metaphor to suggest that her act of writing a Krishna Grantha, such as Purnatama Chandrodaya, is an exemplary act of going beyond her normal abilities in the cause of social good. Also, Narijana could be taken to suggest the limits of spiritual ambition of a woman bhakta in the Vaishnava community, a community fiercely ordered by the rules framed by male theologians. I would again like to bring Madhavi Dasi back into the picture with the help of Madhav Patnaik's Vaishnava Lilamrita, which narrates how Chaitanya, impressed with the literary accomplishment of Madhavi Dasi, allowed her to attend the Goshti meetings of the Vaishnavas, but she was forced to make herself invisible in the public domain because of the express fear that the male Vaishnavas would be aroused with undesirable emotions of love and lust for a woman if she's around. And thus, not only is Madhavi Dasi exiled to the spatial confines of her home, but also to the back pages of Vaishnava intellectual history. Understandably, her bhajans are noteworthy for their tone of distress and perturbation. There is one, for example, in which she mourns the departing of great women saints, as she says, Pingala and 12 others. We do not have the names of the 12 others. Jibanti Pingala Adi Barabala Sansaru Gole Nistari, Mu Charo Nirmakhi. I'm a mere helpless, unprotected woman, Ajogya Nari. But for a contrapuntal, if you keeping in mind Madhavi Dasi's case, one could do a contrapuntal reading with regard to scriptures imposed by the male theologians, and for this one may refer to the Ragatmika Padas of Chandidasa, who says that the company of a woman, in fact, is essential for sadhana. Sumanta Banerjee provides a very interesting account of this, while he makes note of how Sahajiya ideals permeated the Vaishnava practices. He also illustrates the vehemently lustful and fearful expressions of bhakti by women poets, 16th, 17th century women poets of Bengal, such as Rami and Rashamani Dasi. Now, coming back to Brindavati Dasi, she was clearly writing within a tradition constituted by the coalescing of the practices of Krishna Bhakti adopted by women who both obeyed and disobeyed the scriptures to the extent to which they were enabled or disabled by the social and theological order. Brindavati Dasi says, for example, Thai mu gruhastha dharmare achanti mora putra nati abara bahut sampatti ebhabe thai gruha mate krishna charana dhyana arthe sujane karaimu gita. But when she says pasu jemonte abhyasena gruhe rahanti tajibana ehi drushtanta ko mohara dei Shri Krishna dhyana karo. Pasu jemante abhyasena gruhe rahanti tajibana. So I read this on two layers. One is that the home abode, with all its attendant demands made upon a woman who is the primary housekeeper, is considered not as a confinement, particularly as I'm seeing it. I believe Brindavati Dasi sees it as such. It's not a confinement, but as a space which help to restrain unwieldy emotions of passion and devotion, and makes of one a responsible Vaishnava. So her devotion for Krishna is justified on account of her devotion for her husband. Although one cannot miss that she tries a little too hard to explain why she is thinking of him, of Krishna, as her husband. From Madhavi Dasi's exile from the Vaishnava public space to Brindavati's anxiety regarding her accountability to the larger society, which has certain behavioral expectations from a woman, it becomes clear, however, that it is the corporeal aspect of not only the Bhagavan, that is Krishna, but also the Bhakta, which has been an important site of tension. And the importance of Brindavati's repeated mention of her being a chaste wife understood in this context. The second layer of interpretation regarding the home abode is its functional, of home abode, as Brindavati Dasi keeps affirming the importance of the home in her life. Is its functional dimension of privacy, its moral and affective dimensions of filial relations, because she repeats in every adhyaya, Bhima Dasara Nija Mato, Braja Kisoro Dei Chitta, and the natural dimension of a home of simply allowing a person to be. So the home abode also permits for Brindavati Dasi the predominant mood of Sakhya Bhava for Krishna, the flavor that she seeks to emphasize in her devotion for Krishna. So Brindavati Dasi is inspired by the family tradition of Krishna Bhakti. She's enabled by the home environment, which is evidently permeated by the theological discourses as propagated by the different Vaishnava sects. In fact, her active with this is evident from how she entreats upon readers to consider these opposite views with compassion and understanding. She's motivated, and she's both motivated and cautioned by the history of social attitudes towards women in bhakti, and fired with the literary imagination of years of Shravana Patana and Manana. And after that, she finally takes to writing. In her writing, she goes on, in Purnatama Chandrodaya, she goes on to elaborate the steps of sadhana in observance of Sakya Rasa, which can be performed by a householder woman in the home abode. So she tries to reformulate, that is, she extends and recasts the multi-layered concept of Krishna as Purna Bhagavan, explaining the different stages of Krishna's life as manifestations of different potencies. So for that, she uses the terms Purna, Purnatara, and Purnatama. It is aimed at the bhakti community, of course, because she seems to be indulging them with a lavish supply of metaphors to engage with Krishna. And most importantly, she also seems to suggest how the regimen of writing structures her expressions of devotion to Krishna. So that pretty much explains my original argument that Vrindavati's emotion of bhakti is constituted by an intertwining of both her devotion to Krishna and to her family. And the mode of narration, through the mode of narration, we see a family woman who offers a sharp contrast to the gopi, and she is a figure of devotional equanimity and poise. She displays no signs of devotional despair and longing. It appears she has formed a habit of carrying the thoughts of Krishna and writing them down anytime she is free. So most importantly, Vrindavati's family tradition of Krishna Bhakti does not, I argue, necessitate the Bhakti rhetoric of loneliness and longing. For the Bhakta, who is a family woman, her abode, the home, is as good a ritual space where preservation and sustenance are primary activities, and it enables a particular mode of Bhakti. For Vrindavati Dasi, it's Sakya Bhakti, Sakya devotion. And she's also good that she would be accused of being a derelict householder, and that she has found her equanimity by expressing her devotion infused with Sakya Bhava for Krishna. So I leave you with that. Thank you.
And Dr. Urmishri, very, very interesting paper. Yeah, I was just thinking work-life balance. What we are talking about now, what is it? Work and home balance, what we're talking about even now. And that has to be there for a woman to be able to be successful. But this goes on to show how much ambivalence is there in the bhakti tradition also, despite providing the open space, the liberty, the equanimity which it apparently provided. There were spaces which were constricted, and being a woman, she had to negotiate the space to be visible, to be able to, her writing to be visible, and compare it with the banishment which Madhavi Dasi had to face, wherein she, as well as her writing, it had to be banished from Odisha in a sense for a long period of time. So, one cannot look at religion as homogeneous wholes, goes on to talk, tell us once again. And thank you very much for the exposition. Any other question? Since we're already exceeded the time, can we have some more questions? Siddharth.
Yes, Siddharth. Siddharth,
Siddharth,
you're
unmute
muted.
yourself.
Thank you so much, Urmi. That was actually quite interesting. Two thoughts. One, I might be wrong, but does she refer to her children who were also poets in their own rights?
Yes, yes, she does. In fact, I just said, I think, maybe I've forgotten. She makes mention of Bhimadasa, her Bhimadasara Mata, and she refers to, she names her husband, she names her guru. Yes, she does. And she, in fact, keeps repeating herself as Bhimadasa's Mata in all the adhyayas.
Okay.
But she mentions her husband and husband only at the beginning and at the end of the composition. But almost at the end of every adhyaya, she keeps affirming. So I think that is a very important, the emphasis that she puts on her role as a householder and most importantly a mother, and
As a
how
mother.
necessary it is to find a practicable solution to give expression to her devotion for Krishna.
Also, that's true. That's actually quite relevant. Also, in addition to that, uh, Bhimadasa, I think, if I'm not wrong, wrote out his work in 16 about 5 or 6 years earlier than
Hmm.
Chandrodaya was complete.
Yes,
Uh,
in fact, the whole family has they have written compositions which carry this particular title Chandrodaya. Um,
so in a
her
sense,
husband Chandrasekhar also, yes, yes,
what one can think about also is that the way she is positioning herself as Bhimasana's mother, which would indicate that she is also establishing a kind of a relationship with a poet who's already established.
of
If
course, yes, yes.
Bhimasana,
Ratification. Kind of gratification.
In fact,
so
she also keeps drawing the reader's attention to the illustrious family lineage that she belongs to. If
so
I don't know,
so
don't remember if I have made mention during my presentation. She keeps repeating that lineage, that grand lineage she belongs to. Yes,
so she is positioning herself within the text as Bhimasana's mother. If we relate it to the
or
fact that
Dasa's mother. Yeah.
uh, Bhimasana was an established poet, so what we see is that a kind of a legitimation function happening. That's one kind of a thing. And also, what you just said, that the title is also similar to what the other in the family produced, Chandrodaya or the Punatama or something like that. Then that's also another indication where she is locating her texts in a kinds of a community, a family producing poetry generation after generation. So those are the two thoughts.
Yeah, in fact, that was, you also know that this was the original plan of locating her as belonging to a family of poets and theologians, but I haven't been able to
No, no,
do a
no.
complete
What you've
reading
been
of
able
all
to do,
these texts in order to.
it's wonderful.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
but
much.
Preeti, I think, has a question. She says,
Yeah.
you discuss how writing allows her equanimity, which sounds like an absence of emotion. Is there any emotion in the writing? The fact that she is disturbed. Okay, she does. I said that she expresses her anxiety about not being able to be in a place like Vrindavan, to not be in a gopi-like relationship with Krishna. Yes, yes, she's anxious that she's perhaps depriving herself of the gopi emotion if she pays attention to her role as a householder, that she is not um, being able to experience the gopi like emotion. And I don't see that as an absence of emotion. She is disturbed.
Okay.
The Guru lineage, um, just a second. Dayalu Dasa, Sri Dayalu Dasa, his matha is to the west of Purushottam Kshetra. Dayalu is the Shishya in the lineage of Sri Abhiram and Abhiram Dasa. And they all belong, Abhiram Thakur. So her family belongs to Abhiram Thakur Shishya Sampradaya. Abhiram was Chaitanya's Sakha. And Abhiram, in fact, was older than Chaitanya. In the Vaishnava texts figure Abhiram of Gaura Lila as Sridham of Gopalila. And Abhiram Shishya Gopinath was residing in Nilachal. But the names of Dayalu Dasa's Guru and Gopinath Dasa's Shishya are not known. I mean, there is a gap between the initial Guru to which Vrindavati Dasis belongs. And the Shishya, who is Gopinath Dasa, from whom Chandrasekhar got his Diksha. But there's a gap between Dayalu Dasa and Gopinath Das that is still, as of yet, untraceable.
Uh, Professor Danta's question, tell us if there is both a poet's anxiety and a bhakta's anxiety.
I think it's more a bhakta's anxiety rather than a poet's anxiety. In fact, if it is a that reminds me, there is a particular literary convention that she follows, which we call that Vyatireka Alankara. Vyatireka Alankara is about using words to describe the object of your study. Like she is looking for words with which to describe Krishna, and then she sufficient to describe the qualities of Krishna. So that I think is could be termed as an anxiety from a poet's perspective. Otherwise, I would explain this the emotions and the separate adhyayas that we find in Purnatama Chandrodaya, in which she, in fact, she dwells on Sriyanga, she dwells on the Pratyanga, she dwells on Krishna's Lakshana, Vesadhyana, Charitadhyana. In fact, when she dwells on Sriyanga Nirnaya and Pratyanga Kathana, she gives expression to her, anxiety as a woman bhakta, that she's, she has to tread that fine line between, so that she's not accused of being an unchaste housewife, and then she has to dwell on these intimate descriptions of Krishna. I hope I've answered the question.
So
The anxiety of a woman bhakta, yeah.
I think do you think, is there any text that she refers to in her writing? For instance, Bhimadasa's text, what information that we had is Bhimadasa's text refers to the Bhagavatam. And the other text that Bhimadas refers to is that Maithili poet's text. I forget the name right away. So, does she refer to any of the texts in her own poetry?
In fact, I have listed at least 15 texts that she refers to.
Then that becomes.
It's like Bhagavata. Yes, Bhagavata Purana, Bhagavatamrita, Vishnu Purana, Nanda Agama, and she refers to these texts in each of these adhyayas. For Anga Varnana, for example, text. For the Gunadhyana, how she brings into the text. The Bhagavatamrita, Vishnu Purana, Nanda Agama, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, she refers quite often. Padma Purana, Skanda Purana, Vayu Purana, Kisora Astaka, Bhagavad Gita, Narada Purana, Astadasa Purana she brings in Astadasa Purana in a specific manner. That is, she says that she has heard to the Astadasa Purana, Bruhad Vamana. So all these texts, yes, they do appear. She names them, but in various ways. Some of them she has heard being recited. Some of them she has found an opportunity to look into.
So yeah, I agree with Professor Danta's comments. Such networking with text is very important. It helps us to see what was the intellectual universe of that particular poet in that particular time. Which were the texts which were in circulation more that she had an access to. So yeah, I would agree with what Professor Danta says.
Anybody would like to pose? Okay, if not, maybe we can draw the curtains on this very, very interesting day of thinking and contemplating on Bhakti literature. And I would thank each of the speakers and thank Siddharth. Um, Anything else, Siddharth? I don't know how this should end. You should
I
end.
think thanks so much. I mean, it should ideally come to a conclusion by we thanking you for agreeing to chair this session. So for that, I would
I have
like
a
to invite.
choice.
What was that? I missed it.
I said, did I have a choice?
No, but we
But
do have
I
the
felt
choice.
very part of it. I learned more than
But, but
anything else.
we do convey our gratitude to you for having accepted the invite. And may
Thank you.
I invite Akshay to deliver the vote of thanks?
Thank you so much. On behalf of the ICSSR Impress project, Intellectual Histories of Bhakti, and Ravenshaw University, in particular the Center for Trans, to everyone, including Professor Sunita Mishra. She has been a wonderful chair, and she has also been my teacher. So thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. And
Thank you.
those who are watching us online, we will begin tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. sharp. And tomorrow's chair will be Professor Priyadarshi Patnaik. He teaches at IT Kharagpur, and he joined us today. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Ravenshaw University, and in particular Shilpa, who has been working tirelessly,
Yes.
and probably other scholars of Ravenshaw University who have been extending their helping hand to us. Sunita ma'am, thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
How do we leave the meeting? Thanks, everyone.
Your leaves